Maria checks her bank account every morning before she gets out of bed. It's a habit she started 3 years ago, right after she got promoted to senior analyst, right after her salary jumped to $92,000 a year. She checks it not because she's worried. She checks it because she likes what she sees. The number is stable. It doesn't swing wildly. She is never overdraft. She pays her credit card in full every single month. By every conventional measure available to her, Maria is doing fine. She's not drowning. She's not stressed about rent. She's not one emergency away from disaster. Maria believes she is winning at money. Maria is not winning at money. Maria is standing perfectly still while the finish line moves further away every single year. And she has no idea it's happening because nothing about her life feels like failure. That's the trap. That's the specific, quiet, devastating trap I want to talk about today. Not the obvious trap of debt and overspending and bounce checks. The invisible trap of believing that the absence of visible financial pain means you are financially fine. Here's Maria's actual situation. She has $14,000 in a savings account earning 0.4% interest at her local bank. She has $6,000 in an old 401k from a job she left 4 years ago that she has never rolled over or touched. She contributes 3% to her current employer's retirement plan, just enough to get the partial match, and she has told herself for 3 years that she'll increase it once things settle down. Nothing has ever settled down. She has no idea what her money is actually invested in. She has never calculated what she needs to retire. She has never run the math on what inflation is doing to that $14,000 sitting in a savings account. And because none of this produces a crisis, because no bill goes unpaid and no call comes from a collections agency, Maria has never once been forced to confront any of it. My name is Wealth, and for the last several months, I have been studying a specific, dangerous category of financial behavior. Not overspending, not debt, comfort. The particular way that feeling okay can be the exact thing standing between you and actual wealth. If you have ever looked at your bank account, felt a small flicker of relief that the number isn't negative, and mistaken that relief for financial security, this video is going to be uncomfortable. And I'd encourage you to sit with that discomfort rather than click away from it, because on the other side of it is the actual truth about where you stand. Hit subscribe if that sounds like something you need to hear, because what I'm about to walk you through is the real cost of believing you're doing fine. Let's start with what fine actually means to most people, because the definition itself is broken. For the majority of Americans, financial fine is defined entirely by the absence of pain. No overdraft fees, no mispayments, no debt collectors calling, no visible crisis. According to Federal Reserve survey data, roughly 63% of adults say they could cover an unexpected $400 expense using cash or its equivalent, and a huge percentage of that group considers themselves financially stable based on that single data point alone. But covering a $400 emergency and building actual long-term wealth are two entirely different math problems, and conflating them is where the trap begins. Comfort is a feeling. Wealth is a number. And the feeling of comfort can exist for decades, while the number quietly goes nowhere. The first hidden cost is inflation erosion, and it is the most mathematically brutal because it requires 0 bad decisions to destroy your money. It just requires an action. Maria's $14,000 sitting in an account earning 0.4% is not neutral. At an average inflation rate of even 3% annually, that money loses roughly 2.6% of its real purchasing power every single year it sits there. Over 10 years, $14,000 in a near-zero interest account effectively shrinks to the buying power of about $10,700 in today's dollars. She hasn't spent a cent of it. She checks it every morning and feels good about it. And it is quietly evaporating in front of her. This is the cost of believing you're doing fine, because the number in the app isn't shrinking. The number in the app was never the number that mattered. The second hidden cost is opportunity cost on undeployed capital, and this one compounds far past what inflation alone can do. If Maria had that same $14,000 in a broad market index fund, averaging 8% annually instead of a savings account earning 0.4%, the gap after 20 years isn't small. It's the difference between roughly $15,200 and roughly $65,000. That's not a rounding error. That's a $50,000 gap created entirely by the comfort of leaving money somewhere that felt safe in an account she checked every morning and felt good about, doing math she never actually did. The third hidden cost is the abandoned 401k, and this is one of the most common invisible losses in the entire economy. According to data from Capitalize, there are more than 29 million forgotten 401k accounts in the United States, holding a combined total exceeding $1.65 trillion. Maria's old $6,000 account is sitting in a target date fund from a job she hasn't worked at in 4 years, likely carrying higher fees than a modern low-cost index fund, generating returns she has never once checked. It isn't losing money in a dramatic way. It's underperforming quietly, invisibly, in a way that produces no alert, no notification, no reason for her to ever think about it. That is precisely why it never gets fixed. The fourth hidden cost is contribution stagnation, and this is the one with the steepest long-term price tag. Maria contributes 3% to get her employer match and has told herself for 3 years she'll raise it later. But here's what 3 years of later actually costs. If she had increased her contribution by just 2% 3 years ago on her $92,000 salary, that's an additional $1,840 a year invested. Compounded at 8% annually over the remaining 30 years of her career, that single delayed decision costs her more than $200,000 at retirement. Not from a mistake, from a plan to fix it later that never got executed because nothing forced her to. And here's where it gets genuinely dangerous. All 4 of these costs share one defining trait. None of them ever produce a moment of crisis. There is no red notification, no decline card, no collections letter. The entire system of modern personal finance is engineered to feel calm right up until the moment you're 60 years old and discover the math never worked in your favor. Comfort isn't the reward for good financial decisions. Comfort is frequently just the absence of a forcing function. Debt creates a forcing function. Poverty creates a forcing function. A stable paycheck that quietly covers your bills creates the opposite. It creates permission to never look closely, and that permission is expensive in a way that never shows up as a single transaction you could point to and regret. There's a term behavioral economists use for this, the sufficiency illusion. It's the psychological pattern where a person mistakes enough to function for enough to succeed because the human brain is wired to respond to acute pain, not slow erosion. A 2021 study on financial behavior found that individuals who reported feeling financially comfortable were significantly less likely to review their retirement contributions, less likely to compare interest rates on savings accounts, and less likely to consolidate old retirement accounts than individuals who reported feeling financially stressed. Stress, for all its damage, at least produces action. Comfort produces nothing. It produces Maria, checking her balance every morning, feeling relief, and unknowingly forfeiting hundreds of thousands of dollars to a version of herself 30 years from now who will have no idea why the math didn't work out. So how do you actually check whether you're fine or just comfortable? Here's the audit. First, calculate your real rate of return across every account you hold, savings, checking, old retirement accounts, and compare each one against inflation. If any account is earning less than 3%, you are not preserving wealth in that account. You're losing it slowly. Second, locate every account from every job you've ever left. Forgotten 401ks are not neutral. They're actively costing you in fees and missed growth every single day. They sit unconsolidated. Third, calculate the real dollar cost, not the percentage cost, of any contribution increase you've been postponing. A 2% delay doesn't sound like anything. A $200,000 delay sounds like everything, and they are the exact same decision. Fourth, ask yourself honestly whether your sense of financial security is based on a calculation or based on the absence of a recent problem. Those are not the same thing, and only one of them scales. Maria is still checking her account every morning. She still feels that same small flicker of relief. Nothing about her daily life has changed, and nothing about her daily life needs to change for the cost to keep compounding silently in the background. She isn't failing. She isn't reckless. She is simply someone who mistook the absence of financial pain for the presence of financial progress. And the version of her at 65 is going to inherit the full price of that mistake without ever having felt a single moment of it happening. Being fine was never the goal. Fine was just the version of struggling that doesn't feel like struggling. Go check the number that actually matters, not the one in your checking account, but the one 20 years from now that depends on what you do with today. If this changed how you think about your own fine, hit that like button and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.